What is your favorite time for art studio practice? Art practice or studio practice?
Well, that's easy to answer because it's always night. It has always been night. I'm a very nocturnal person, and I work better. And now because I have a day job, that's the only time I have. But that goes very well with my habits. So I would, I mean, there's one word answer. I'm a nocturnal creature. So I work much better because as the night progresses, things calm down, it's quieter. I find it much more conducive for work.
Do you walk every day? In case of an artist block, how do you deal with it?
Uh, no, I would love to work every day, but that doesn't happen really. I mean, uh, but I'd like to spend this time in the studio. I mean, even if I'm pottering around, I'm reading, I'm just staring at blank wall or an unfinished work. It's not necessarily that you're working all the time, but yes, a regularity does help. As for artist blocks, well, you have to work around it. Everybody has it, and it's no point trying to, you know, either wait it out or you work around it. Sometimes I have an artist block with a particular work, then I just keep it aside and start a new one. Or sometimes I just stop and start reading or listening to music or something, you indulge in something which is completely unrelated and then you come back. And that might take a very long time. Just the other day, I was looking at a work which I started about 8 years ago. And I went back to it and did many things which 8 years ago I felt that it was just a wall. I couldn't move forward. So I left it at that and I packed up and kept the work aside. So I went back to it and it was lying there in my studio again for about a month, after which I felt like doing something and that saved the work. So, yeah, there are many strategies you can take, but artist block is a reality. It happens. Uh, you have to go around it, I suppose.
What's your take on concept driven art exhibitions? How do you associate yourself with the process of collaborating with the curator?
See, concept driven art exhibitions are there, will be there, and any exhibition would have some concept, unless you just band together a group of people just because you know them and put them together. Visuals have a tendency of you know uh, creating meaning. So even when something is done at random, they sometimes I like them. I think exhibitions necessarily talk about a concept. Uh, and now that the curator's role has become very important, it often is driven by one person vision. That's the curator's vision. So it's fine. I mean, if it's a natural organic process. If it works, if I find that my ideas are resonating, or I find the interesting ideas which are exciting to me, then I respond, or else I don't. I let it go. There have been instances of very prestigious shows where I didn't find it was resonating. For instance, I was asked to participate in a show in New York at the Queen's Museum about some years ago. I remember it was about the diaspora. I don't really consider myself diasporic, so I turned it down. I'm not going to bend over backwards if it's the curator's job to find the right slot where I fit. And if I fit, I fit. If we are on the same page, well and good. If not, I'm not going to bend over backwards. So that's my take.
Are you a tech savvy person? Do you think it's necessary uh, as a skill set for any contemporary artist?
Well, there are multiple meanings. So what you mean by tech savvy can mean that yes, I can conduct a Zoom meeting or a Google Meet, or I do have a WhatsApp or an Instagram account. So yes, but in terms of my work, I keep the technology on the periphery as little as possible. I know it's a very exciting world, but I don't necessarily go in there because I'm quite excited by things which are very low tech, because I think they still have a lot to say and a lot to give. So in my work, no, I don't think I'm tech savvy in that sense. But then everybody who's working now uses social media, has to, and I'm a teacher, so I'm using all kinds of tools for online classes. So yes, in that sense, I am reasonably tech savvy, I should think. Yes.
And in the current context, like in contemporary times, is it a necessary skill set to have for any contemporary artist? What do you think about it?
Well, if you are doing it all by yourself, then yes. If you can depend on somebody, then perhaps you don't need to. But you have to have some idea of how it works. Um, that is becoming increasingly necessary, especially in the last 1.5 years of this lockdown. A certain nimbleness with technology helps you to reach out, or else you will be completely isolated. So whether it's a friend, whether it's an assistant, whether it's your spouse or somebody, your child or whoever, can help you out, fine, take that help. If you don't have any such person, then yes, you will have to equip yourself, and it's not that difficult, I guess. You just have to not suffer from technophobia. As long as you are not phobic about it, it should come quite naturally. They are not very difficult to master.
Apart from visual arts, any other medium of art which inspires or triggers your practice?
Almost all mediums of art, the written word, literature, music, theater, film, dance, anything can trigger it. And also um, looking around, just walking. But that is obviously not another form of art, walking around. But yeah, all these things inspire me. Absolutely. Because my first exposure to art per se was illustration in books, which I loved, and theater, which my father was involved. So these are the two things that were the mainstay of my cultural exposure. Everything else came later.
What is the biggest fear of an artist?
The fear is not being seen, because see, when you make a work, you are thinking about some form of communication. It's all very nice to say that I work for myself, it doesn't matter, but it does matter. There is at least that one ideal audience, the Theo, for everybody, out there. And hopefully there are more than one. And every artist, I think, needs that communication. So if you are if you cannot make that communication, if that doesn't happen, then that can be an absolute killer. So I think every artist, as at least I am, absolutely mortified of not being able to communicate.
Walk us through your creative process. Do you have a vision right away, or do you make it up as you go along?
See, there was a time when I was sort of making it up as I went along, but over a period of time, if you are practicing in a regular basis, everybody develops their areas of interest. So I also have my world, and it is an open-ended thing. It is not something that is fenced up. It allows a lot of breeze to pass over, change things. like Gandhiji said, I will be in my house and windows will be open, breeze will blow through it. It's just that I'm not going to be blown away in that breeze. I will hold on to that. So it's like that. I think every artist marks a territory, and that territory belongs to them. That can overlap, that is porous. It's not something that has a Lakshman Rekha around it or a Chinese wall around it. But nevertheless, it is there, it forms over a period of time. And once it forms, it can expand, it can take on new spaces, new territories, but the core is there. And so any work that you do is kind of related to that core, I suppose.
Share your thoughts regarding how, as a visual artist, you tend to you seek to evolve with time.
Which is very much related to the earlier
To the earlier
question,
question.
because if you make a diagram of how your practice moves, it'll be a sort of circular movement like this with certain axes or spokes. And those are the points where you keep coming back, but you don't touch that axis at the same point. When you come back to it, you've already moved further away. And yet, those axes, if you take them as your interests or your territories, they kind of, there is a constant and there is also a change. So even if you come back after, say, a gap of maybe 5 years, you have gone back to an interest which you had dealt with, or you did a body of work, say, 5 years ago, you will realize that you have evolved and you are not approaching that territory from exactly the same point where you were 5 years ago, and that is your evolution. So even though you have a territory, even though you have certain common interest, certain interest which you keep going back to, every time you go there after a gap, you realize that you have actually moved. It's not a static position, and that is what makes you evolve. But it's never a straight line from A to B. It is always a circuitous movement, because you keep coming back and then you go away and then you come back again. And it's just not one axis, there are often multiple axes. At least that's what happens with me. And they often pull in contradictory directions, and that lends that tension to the work. So you are kind of trying to hold these two contradictory things together. For instance, I did a body of work where I was very interested in a sort of Euclidean space which goes in, right? But I was also interested in the flatness of painting. Now, how do you combine these two aspects? So I found a solution in using shaped canvases, which kind of indicates a recession of space. And at the same time, in reality, they are actually flat. And the image sometimes played along with the shape, sometimes countered or contradicted that space, and thereby emerged a tension between the opposites. So it's like that, and that is an interest that I then cast aside. I thought, no, I'm not going to do this. But after a few years' time, I realized that, well, no, I still have an interest in that, and I would like to go back there. So it is, nothing is cast off permanently, I suppose. It's all there, and they keep appearing, reappearing within that territory.
Your views on online art exhibitions and presentations,
It
which is
has
a very
become,
current like going by the context currently.
yeah. Irrespective of my views, they are going to stay. I mean, we have seen that, that seemed to be the only way you can reach out to. And this is a very abnormal situation of the lockdown and complete isolation and restriction on physical movement, on gathering. So online exhibitions are here to stay. And also, the advantages of going across geography. My friend is having a show in London at the moment. How can I see it? The only way I can see it is online because I cannot fly to London. Um, but having said that, when you are talking about plastic art, especially which is not meant to be consumed digitally, I mean, if you're talking about a digital art exhibition, of course, then there are different rules for that. But say I'm talking about a painted image or a sculpture, then of course, if you see it offline, uh, that is in the real, you have a different experience of it altogether. You know, because there is a physicality that is involved. And what is online? It's basically an electronic image on a backlit screen, and not everything can be experienced in that manner. It is better than nothing, certainly. It's here to stay, certainly. But is it an ideal solution? No. It is only going to work when the other options are foreclosed. So it's here to stay, but I don't think that is going to replace actual exhibitions. That's not going to happen. I don't think so.
What do you enjoy being more, uh, the artist or the teacher?
Well, they're both creative professions. Teaching is as creative as being a practicing artist. So the diplomatic answer would be I enjoy both. But I think the real answer is somewhere in between. There are times when I really feel the need. I was talking about sharing, right? And teaching is also a form of sharing. So I do enjoy teaching. But teaching, when you are teaching formally in an institution, also entails other things, administrative responsibilities, clerical work. I am not very fond of those things. But when it comes to pure teaching, when you are responding, when you're mentoring, when you're helping somebody see things, that I hugely enjoy. But having said that, I can I can foresee myself when I'm not teaching formally, although the teacher in me will be there, I'm sure, and that's not going to go away. But I do enjoy enormously the time that I spend with myself, a very solitary time in the studio. My art practice is very solitary. I don't work with assistants. I don't need people in my studio. I don't work with helpers. So at least when I'm deeply, deeply immersed in a work, I want complete solitude. And as long as I get that, I'm perfectly happy. And teaching is not a solitary thing. So you're constantly interacting. So there are these two very contradictory aspects to teaching and to my practice. And I enjoy both. And I'm not being diplomatic. That is the honest answer.
What advice can you give artists who are just starting out?
Well, I think the main advice is that, making art is not an office job. If you decide to be an artist, you're an artist 24/7. And don't get swayed by trends and fashions. You have to have something to say to begin with, and you have to be open. And the one character that you have to retain, which many people tend to lose very quickly, is the sense of wonder. Don't be closed. The world is throwing surprises. The art world is also full of excitement. There are lots of things which are hyped, which are fashionable, which are trendy, and you will, get your way, provided you have the patience and you have a sense of genuine wonder. And then why do we all make art? Because we want to do what we love doing, what we can do, and what we want to do, right? And so these three things, when they come together, wonderful things happen. You lose time of count of time. You kind of spend hours without realizing. And that is what sometimes musicians say, that, I was connecting with the divine. I don't believe in divine, but I think that those are the times when you are in your element. And every artist, I suppose, strive to have those times, and they are absolutely makes you ecstatic. So those are the things. I think there are many external facets of the art world: the glamour, the money, the name, the fame. The more you keep yourself away from it, the better it is for your practice, I think. You know, and that is my advice: that retain your sense of wonder and learn to look. If you look, world is full of wonderful things.
Thanks a lot, Indra.
You're welcome.